This is Pat Long. Pat loves to build airplanes. Today we are in McKinney, Texas at McKinney National Airport to see his progress on his latest creation, the Spacewalker II, with some unique modifications that we think you'll find very interesting.
Hi everyone, I'm Pat Long. I'm a member of the EAA Chapter 1246 here in beautiful McKinney, Texas on a beautiful flying day. I'm here with Jim to talk about the airplane I've been putting together. This is my fourth airplane. I built a UPF-7 Waco years ago. I rebuilt it, and then a Hatz CB1, and then a Hatz Classic, and then finally the airplane behind me. This airplane started as a Spacewalker II. It's not going to look like your typical Spacewalker II because I've basically militarized it. The basic structure is the same, the wood wing structure, the steel tube fuselage, and tail structure. But I've rounded out the fuselage, and as you'll see in a little bit, installed T-6 canopies, and I had to extend the fuselage engine mount a little bit because putting all the equipment on it and basically militarizing what should be a basic little home-built airplane, I created a very tail-heavy airplane. So to fix that, one of the biggest changes was this engine mount, which is 20 inches longer than the original engine mount. And that was required to bring the CG back into a range that would be acceptable and stay still within about an inch ahead of the aft CG limit. So basically it's about a 1,400 to 1,500 pound airplane. The engine's a Continental 0200 with a prop off a Cessna 150, and I've changed it by installing wing tanks in the leading edge of both wings to get a little extra fuel capacity. There is a fuel tank ahead of the front cockpit that will hold about 15 gallons. That's a still to be determined factor. But between the wing tanks, which should be about 5, and the main tank, which should be about 15, that would give me 3.5 hours endurance with the 0200. Something I wanted to be able to fly 100 or 200 miles maybe and not have to consider getting refueling. It's basically a standard Cessna 150 installation of the engine. I did change it a little bit by installing a little bit of an air dam around the oil filter to act as an oil cooler. Other than that, it's a pretty much stock installation. As you'll see later, the canopies are the sections off a T-6. I got the idea for the airplane when I bought the front windshield off a hamburger stand in San Diego, California for $100. And then I looked for an airplane that I could build around it. Fortunately, there's a company in Dallas area, Lance Aircraft, that has a lot of, well, the world's supply of T-6 parts, so I could get all the little components that I needed, including things such as the linkages here for the engine controls. So there are a lot of T-6 parts, but like I said before, it's basically a Spacewalker II with a rounded fuselage, canopies, and a landing gear extended about 9 inches. Other than that, it's just a little 100 horsepower, 2-people airplane. I thought we'd talk about some of the features on the right side of the airplane. First one is the ground power plug, which is a handy addition to the airplane if the battery is a little bit low. That's just a standard military issue, normally 24 volt, but I'm using a 12 volt electrical system. The panel up here is one of the original T6 panels made in 1944, I believe. And on the inside of it, there's still the original instructions that were used for aiming the 30 caliber machine gun that was installed here. The hump on the panel was to enclose the breech of the machine gun, and of course the barrel sticks out over the cowling of the engine. Here we have an air oil separator to put the vapor fumes from the crankcase, hopefully some of the oil, back into the engine rather than just blowing it overboard. As you can see, the canopy behind it, it's the original T6 laminated glass windshield. It's a very heavy assembly. The tube sticking out of the center panel of the windshield is a thermometer. That again is original installation. All the canopy parts are original 1940s North American AT-6 components. Okay, this time we've moved around to the baggage compartment here. Again, this is something the standard Spacewalker didn't have, but I'm copying BT-13s and the AT-6s. The latch is off a T-6. You push in on the top and pull it, and then it pulls out the pin and you can open your baggage compartment. And it also has a lock on it. The canopies, like I said, are basically T6 canopies with the exception of the airplane's not big enough to use the center panel. Normally T6 would have 3 sections like this, but this smaller airplane I can only use 2. So this rear section is the original 1943 section with the original plexiglass in it. It had never been used on an airplane. And to clean off the old preservative, Dawn dishwashing detergent did a perfect job of removing the old wax. The canopy mechanism is a standard T6 mechanism. To lift the canopy from the or open the canopy from the outside, you have to lift this little pin at the bottom. So if you just lift that up about 1/4 of an inch, it releases the latch. And after that, you can pull the handle on the inside to move it to full range of motion. And there are numerous stops on the canopy rail so you can lock it open in any position you'd like. Okay, the front canopy opens the same as the rear. You have to lift up on this little pin and that releases the latch, and then you can just pull it back. And when you're inside the airplane, you'd operate it with this big red handle. Again, just standard AT-6 parts. And the handle on the side is definite experimental aircraft quality equipment. It's a good handle from your local hardware store. Okay, I thought I'd show you a few of the details of the tail structure. Again, the basic structure is the identical structure shown on the plans for the Spacewalker II, a Roman numeral II. I did change the outline shape a little bit to make it more of the 1940s time period and paint the stripes on the rudder. This paint scheme was used in the late 30s up till early 1942, and then of course it all changed because of the war. The basic structure is steel tube. On the top of the tubes that act as ribs, there's a little balsa wood fairing, about 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch balsa wood, that just gives it a little bit of an aerodynamic shape rather than a flat airfoil surface. The left elevator has a cockpit adjustable trim tab for pitch. The rudder has a trim tab, but this one is only ground adjustable. Once I fly the plane and decide how much I need in cruise flight, I can adjust this on the ground and take out the rudder pedal pressure requirement. Again, the blue stripe should be 30% of the widest chord of the rudder. This one is pretty close to 30%. Sometimes you'll see it much smaller, sometimes wider. And you have, of course, 13 alternating red and white stripes for the American flag.